You're listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. In the blue corner, we've got Mr. Karle supporting Tottenham. In the red corner, we've got Mr. Kenner supporting Arsenal. Together, they will be discussing all of your football views, all of your football news. So join us here on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar.
Hello and welcome to what is episode 20 of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar, the football podcast. I'm joined by Steve Kenton.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Chris.
And also joining us, friend of Steve's, Mitch, who is an Arsenal fan. Hello, Mitch.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you for joining us. And as ever as well, of course, Geoff Saunders, West Ham. Geoff, hello, Geoff.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here.
Right, let's get started. We're in the middle of an international break, so I think we're going to start with that. But before that, according to tradition, let's have Geoff's trivia question first.
We're used to players scoring a lot of goals in a match, and the record for the most number of goals in an English match is 9.
Ah, yes, and I know who this is as well.
Go on then.
Ted McDougall versus Bournemouth.
That was an FA Cup match. I said league match.
League match.
Robert Bell of Tranmere against Oldham in 1935. McDougall got 9 in an FA Cup game against Margate in 71. 9 is a lot. Now, Blackburn winger Morten Gamst Pedersen once scored 6 goals in one match, which doesn't sound so great compared to those who got 6, 7 and 9. So why is that 6 goals in one match unique?
Absolutely no idea.
That's a great answer, because that allows me then to say the answer at the end of the show. Let's move on then, shall we, and talk a little bit about what's been happening in the international sphere, because we're in the middle of an international break. It is Euro qualifiers. England, Steve, lost their first ever qualifier for 10 years. It was away from home to the Czech Republic. Let's go around the table and have a little sort of, because we all watched the game. An hour and a half of my life I'll never get back. What were your impressions of the game?
After about 45 minutes, when I did actually wake up, it was actually a dreadful game for England. Well, from an English perspective, it was a dreadful game. It was anodyne, it was sterile. There was just nothing to it at all. The defence looked shabby. The attack, there just didn't seem to be anything. There was nothing coming through midfield. There was no creativity, and there were square pegs in round holes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't understand why you pick players based on their club performance and then play them out of position, like Jadon Sancho. It was nonsense. He's a wide right player. He's been the best player in the Bundesliga this season, so he has him playing inside right so Trippier can overlap. Why not just let the two of them sort it out together on the pitch? Because that's what they've been doing since they started playing football. They know how to do this. And I think what we saw were a bunch of players who didn't understand what they were supposed to do.
Another point which player-wise I don't quite get is Jordan Pickford. The guy has a shot on goal, the ball's at the back of the net, and he's diving like he's doing a swan dive across the net just to make himself look good. I just don't understand how he gets in that team when there's other keepers around, like Pope, Heaton, who are shot stoppers, and the idea of a goalkeeper is to stop shots.
First and foremost, yes, absolutely. That's the first thing you've got to do. Yeah, Pickford, I think he's picked because his distribution is excellent, and it's superb. But your first job it's like picking a defender because he's a great ball player. Well, he's got to be a good defender first, and a goalkeeper's got to be a good shot stopper. Pickford is an example of something which happens a lot with English players. They get picked quite young, and then it becomes almost impossible to drop them for some reason. When did Pickford become a great goalkeeper? If you're going to be undroppable, it's got to be because you're great. You're a Zlatan Ibrahimovic or something. And he's not. He's been as flaky in the last season and a half as David De Gea for Manchester United has. But, both... Yeah, but Pickford is just... It was a mystery to me. And Henderson, when did Henderson become an international class player? I missed it completely.
Yeah, but the trouble is there isn't actually anybody else but Henderson who is any better than Henderson in that position at the moment, which shows how poor we are in that particular sphere of the midfield.
Can we just have a little talk about Declan Rice? Because, Geoff, you're a bit of a fan of his. The shape that Southgate played, he played different defenders than he has before, different shape in general. Declan Rice looked lost. I think his partnership there as well with Henderson, wasn't it? They just didn't seem to gel. Is that something to do with Rice? Is he not ready for England? Or is it something to do with Southgate?
I think most of the people who know, the managers and coaches and people, said he's played very well for England. I think he has. And I think he's played well this season. But if you go from a 4-1 to a 4-2, then the two holders have got to work together, and they clearly didn't. You could see every time the Czechs got the ball, there wasn't a back four in a line, which Arsenal fans know all about. It's how you defend. But there wasn't. It was a zigzag. The two weren't in a line. They did not know what to do. It's like it hadn't been rehearsed enough in training. Maybe Southgate decided the night before or something, but it wasn't working. And I think what you then see is particular individuals then don't look very good because they put themselves in a position to do something and it doesn't work.
Also, a point is England under Southgate, 38% of the goals they've conceived have been from set pieces. That has to be addressed as well. That's over a third.
So we conceived or conceded?
Oh, conceded. Did I say conceived?
You said conceived, yeah. But it's probably 68% who conceived from set pieces. Yeah. You would think that of all the nations in the world, England should not be beaten on corners, goals from corners and things. Really,
yeah, shock. I mean, not only can they not take them, they can't conceive them either.
But if we're conceding goals through set pieces. You've obviously got to look at Harry Maguire. You've really got to look at our centre backs and also, is zonal marking an option for England given the players that we have?
Were they zonal marking?
Well, it was supposed to be. Yeah, no, it was supposed to be zonal marking, but it clearly wasn't happening. And also playing with, as we said off air, two holding midfielders. Why are we playing with two holding midfielders against the Czech Republic, who are a good side, but they're not a side that we shouldn't be besting?
Well, the reason for playing two holding midfielders was there was a lot of pressure to get Mason Mount into the team, and I think he should have played.
Yeah.
So Southgate went all protective. Oh, if we've got this attacking midfielder going forward, we need more defence to cover up for him. I think that's all the thinking was. I mean, it's nonsense thinking, but I think that's what it was.
It's completely ludicrous because ultimately, your best form of defence is to attack.
Well, as we've seen in football for the last 15 years, yeah.
So what did we make of the Czech Republic as an opposition?
I think they showed a lot more flair going forward, a lot more imagination. You're talking about players that play in the top leagues around the world, so they're not playing in their own league, coming up against the Premier League players. They're playing in the Premier League. They're playing in La Liga, Serie A, Ligue 1, if you like, and others where they're playing against good players. And when you put all that together with their experience, if there were, let's say, a lesser nation 5-6 years ago, that gels and becomes a unit that moulds and builds up over the period of time. And then it's like as if England has stagnated. How many of the England team play in Spain, Germany, Italy?
They are playing in what is supposed to be the greatest league in the world, though.
Yeah, one thing to remember about the Czech Republic is they have made the final of an international competition more recently than England has.
That's true. Several other countries have as well. There's an interesting stat, actually, in relation to England playing in Prague. We haven't actually won in Prague for 111 years, believe it or not, when we beat Bohemia, 1908.
You mean England?
Yeah.
No, Steve was there.
Yeah. It was a cheeky 1-0 win. Vivian Woodward scored.
Thank you very much for that memory. So, yeah, are the Czech Republic, then, from what Mitch was just saying there, the Czech Republic better than we possibly thought they were? Or England, we think they're better than they actually are?
Both.
We're expecting too much, are we, as usual?
I just think when England walk on a football field, they think that if they're not playing an Argentina or a Brazil or an Italy, France, I think when they walk on the field against, if you like, it's not even right to say the second division of European nations, but let's say the Czech Republics, the Albanians and all them, they think they've got the given right that once we walk on that field, 3 points are ours. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to break into a sweat. It's just a given that we know we're going to score because we got Kane up front or whoever else. Whereas these other nations, they keep their players much the same, and eventually it clicks, gels. It's like if you go back to the Brazil team of 1970, in my opinion, the greatest team ever to walk on a football field.
Agreed.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But if you went back with that team 4 years, they were getting beat by Chile, by Peru, and eventually 2 years down the line, it gelled and it clicked, and they became the team that is known as the greatest, that will never be emulated.
The thing about that team, aside from being top to toe with, apart from the goalie, fantastic world-class players, they worked much harder. People who've done the studies and looked at them, they ran much further than anybody else in that World Cup.
Exactly.
They worked harder, they tackled more.
And it wasn't about Pele either.
No.
It wasn't about him. You had
he was the
Revellino, Jairzinho, Tostao, and all of the others.
And Gerson was fantastic.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if that team was in its peak today, playing against any nation in the world, it would wipe the floor with them.
Well, they wiped the floor with Italy in the World Cup final.
Yeah,
nobody wipes the floor with Italy.
No, that was a training session.
Under Catenaccio, nobody scores 4 goals against Italy. It was just...
Back in those days, it just wasn't heard of.
It didn't happen.
But not just to do that, but Italy were chasing shadows for all bar 3 or 4 minutes in that time where they scored their goals.
Steve, from what Mitch and Geoff are just saying there, is football levelling out? Because, for example, Brazil, yesterday or the day before, drew 1-1 with Nigeria. A couple of days before that, they drew 1-1 with Senegal. They're not as good as in the days of Pelé, etc. France narrowly beat Iceland with a dodgy penalty in the Euro qualifiers. Is there a bit of levelling out? Andorra winning a qualifier, all that kind of thing. England not progressing and getting better. Everybody else is catching up with them.
Football's definitely levelling out. But then you've got a lot of players from various other, what we term smaller nations, playing in the top leagues now. And I think that's an asset to those international sides. We've got players now playing in the top leagues that are ordinarily we wouldn't have seen 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So, yeah, there is definitely a levelling out of the sport.
Let's keep our attention on England for the time being. Well, as we're recording this, England play Bulgaria in Bulgaria tonight. So I don't know if we're going to have a little prediction on that one. England's still joint top of the group along with the Czech Republic. There's no panic here. We are going to qualify, but it's how we set up for those finals, because I don't think that performance on Friday it looked flat. Now, is it because the players are trying to avoid getting injured, or is it just because they're just not internationals, these players?
I think most of that 11 are internationals. They just didn't understand what they had to do. I don't think you need to say much more about that performance.
I feel we're going to see more of the same against Bulgaria tonight. I don't think Southgate's going to change that too significantly.
Oh, I think he is.
You think so?
Well, there's rumours of him playing Harry Winks, and how the hell does Harry Winks get in an England team?
That shows how bad we were the other day.
He's been one of the worst players in a Spurs team that's playing very badly, and yet he'll probably start tonight. But I think what we saw the other night was exactly the same as what we saw in the World Cup. The first time we came up against a decent, well-organised team, we struggled, and that's been the case as long as I can remember.
It does make you wonder whether we should be starting with Harry Kane. I think Harry Kane, great striker as he is, no criticism of him as a striker, but I think against certain defences he struggles to unlock those defences.
Blaming the striker is always different. I agree with you. I think he should be dropped on form, and the Chelsea lad should have started. Against
Tammy Abraham. Yeah.
Then it gave Southgate the chance, if that didn't work, to bring Kane back in and, if you like, solve the problem.
I'm inclined to agree with that. I mean, I at the moment on form, Tammy Abraham is a striker you'd start with. You just would.
The thing I like about Tammy Abraham is, I think he's got the one thing which is the most valuable thing you can have as a striker. I think he's lucky. He scores some horrible goals, and that's fantastic. No, Kane seems to be going for just trying to score good goals all the time.
Yeah,
he's like
Abraham's has got a physicality about him as well, where Kane falls over quite easily.
Well, Kane seems to have taken himself away from being a number 9 to try and drop back and be a number 10. Because I think somebody told him he was the new Sheringham or something, and he likes the idea of that. Yeah, and he likes the idea of that. Yeah. Whereas, no, you're just a striker. Just get in there. Get where the ball's going to be.
In the defence of Kane, I would say if you don't give him the ball, he ain't going to do anything with it. That's a given, whichever centre forward.
Yeah, the sad thing is Kane is the best crosser of the ball in the England team.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
The irony is, I think at the last 4 or 5 goals that he's scored, I think 70% of them have been penalties. They've not been from open play.
As a Tottenham fan, in defence of Harry Kane in that England game, I think what you're saying, Geoff, I'm not sure if he likes playing the number 10 and he just drifts back to it. I think he's been told to do that by Southgate. I think Southgate somehow sees him in that role, and I think Mitch is right. He's that kind of forward that you need to get the ball to him.
Yeah.
And if you can't even get the ball out of defence, or you're losing the ball in midfield, that ain't going to happen.
If your number 1 player is a striker, you can't expect him to drop 40, 50 yards to pick a ball up. We'll go off the England bit. If you took Aubameyang at Arsenal or Lacazette, they don't come back into their own half to get the ball. They hang up there, the ball's put up to them, they get the ball, bang, they have an attempt on goal. Kane should be doing the same thing. You can't take your centre forward and bring him back behind the midfielders or alongside them to get the ball. Because when it is pushed forward, he's 30 yards behind it.
Well, and the other issue is that as a striker, you should go up there. The first thing you should do is bang into the centre halves.
Yeah, let him know he's there. Say, hello, welcome to the game.
And get the two of them following him about. And that creates the space for the other Sterling and the other players.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't. We're too gentlemanly-like on the field.
But it was down to, it's what Chris said, it's down to what Southgate told them to do. He set them up in this formation which didn't work. Then he had Kane dropping back to take the space away from anyone in England midfield who needed it. It was just nonsense.
All right, let's take a little pause there because next week, on the next week's show, we're going to have footballer John Gidman, who played, of course, for Manchester United, Aston Villa, Everton and Manchester City. And John Gidman and fellow footballer Steve Staunton are going to be doing a charity event here on the Costa del Sol at Scandals in Calahonda. It's a charity event on the 19th of October to raise money for Prostate Cancer UK. It's a question and answer evening compared by Steve Owen. If you'd like more details, you can get to the Scandals Facebook page by searching Scandals Bar, Lounge and Restaurant. So that is a charity event for Prostate Cancer UK at Scandals this Saturday, the 19th of October at 7 p.m. with football legends John Gidman and Steve Staunton. And while we're on the subject of home nations and England's drop in form, if you like, well, it's the first time they've lost in 10 years, so it is a kind of drop in form as far as qualifiers go. Let's move on to the other home nations, because, Steve, you've got a little bit of an opinion about Scotland.
Oh, dear. 6-0 win. That's not going to paper over the cracks, is it, Chris? Do you know, I watched them against Russia. 4-0 defeat. I'll tell you what, they started okay. First half, they were okay. Second half, complete capitulation. Defence was all over the place. I mean, it was being sliced open time and time again by the Russian midfield and the attack. And I'll tell you what, Russia could have had 6 or 7. That would not be an underestimation.
The one thing I would say is I hope people don't turn around and start blaming Steve Clarke, because he's only just taken the job and he's taken on a horrendous set of players, and it's not down to him. The players just appear not to be trying.
He's got a poison chalice there. I mean, it's interesting the demise of Scotland, a Scottish international side. You know, even the Scottish League format. It's just, without wishing to sound insulting, it's just ever so poor. There's no real reason to understand as to why that is happening.
Well, I think there is a reason for it. If you go back to when we were young, so this is an old man's conversation, every successful team had a core of Scottish players in it. They had a midfielder, they had an inside forward, they had a good defender. That doesn't happen anymore, does it? And it hasn't happened for 15 to 20 years. And the reason is, when money started coming into football, Scandinavians particularly started going over into the Scottish League and using it as a shop window to get into the Premier League.
Or other leagues around Europe,
So the Scottish players, young Scottish players, aren't getting the chance in the Scottish Premier League teams that they used to get. They're now full of Europeans.
It's interesting because even from a goalkeeping perspective, they've never had a goalkeeper. I can't think of one.
George Wood, who played for Everton, was a
Are we talking
one.
the same George Wood that played for Arsenal?
Yeah.
Teflon.
Well, no, he was all right. He was all right for Everton.
Yeah?
Yeah, he was.
He played for Arsenal. We called him Teflon because everything getting bounced off of him, it was non-stick. He couldn't catch cold. There you go. Maybe they should get Jermaine Defoe to go from being English to Scottish. That might help their situation.
I don't think even Defoe can save them. Steve, you said it was a poison chalice. It is, but without the chalice, it's not even. There's nothing good about that.
Yeah,
job,
I mean, when I look at the Scottish League, there's a real dearth of talent there. The Scottish League has always had some reasonably decent side. As Geoff pointed out, when we were younger, you had Dundee United or Dundee, Aberdeen, Heart of Midlothian, Rangers, Celtic. Rangers obviously pushed out of the Scottish leagues, had to make their way back in again. It's left basically Celtic holding the fort for the leagues in Scotland. And so I think there's a real dearth of money, dearth of talent. Consequently, Scottish international side is suffering.
Let's move on quickly to Wales under the tutelage of Ryan Giggs. I say tutelage, he's there. They've got Gareth Bale.
Yeah, they need.
What else can you say about Wales? That's about it, really, isn't it? They sometimes have Aaron Ramsey when he's not injured.
They needed Bale against Croatia. Mind you, that was a decent result, 1-1 draw. It's not a bad result against World Cup finalists.
Well, it's better than England did.
Well, exactly, yeah. the game against Slovakia, another 1-1 draw. They're sitting in 4th place on 8 points. Wales are a better side than that.
Well, Wales are actually, when you look player for player, they're actually a decent team. So that's okay. I think the one thing which has come out of the last 2 weeks is a very sort of heavy set of ironies. That Ryan Giggs wants these players to play for Wales, and the players' teams don't want them to play for Wales, and he's now having to beg for players to come and play, when he was the worst culprit of all in not turning up for Welsh internationals.
Yeah.
Him and Fergie saying, no, you don't play. So it's the biter bit, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is the way football is going in general. I think a lot of players just do not want to play friendlies full stop across the board. I don't think it's just specifically a Welsh problem.
Yeah, but these weren't friendlies. These are competitive
No,
matches.
I know. This makes it even worse.
I think a lot of that comes down to when you say like the Fergusons back then, even clubs now. At the end of the day, it's the clubs who are giving them $200,000 a week, not their national team. You know, and if you're paying someone $200,000 a week and he says, I'm going to go abseiling next week, you're going to say, hang on a minute, fella. It's not going to happen. You know, I need you for the Saturday game, which in the long run is worth more to me because I want to win the Premier League, get into the Champions League and possibly win that, etc., etc. It's down to who pays the wages. You know, I know everyone wants to play for their country, but if you're not getting paid and you're getting a cap or whatever it is, I think that's where it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, there is an anecdotal story in the papers this week about Sven-Göran Eriksson saying that when he was picking Rooney, of course, when he was playing for Manchester United and picking Rooney for the England team, he said he used to get 7 o'clock in the morning calls from a very angry Alex Ferguson. And he said he was always angry at that time of the morning, and I think probably a hangover or something, but he was always angry in the mornings and would call up and said, if you select Wayne, I will kill you. You are finished. Now, Eriksson said that this was quite a regular event, but he said that as England manager, you know, he had to pick who he thought was going to be best, and he would have to say, what's the matter with you? F off. I'm not sure if anybody's actually told Sir Alex to F off. So I can imagine him threatening to off him if he selected Rooney, but that's the point that Mitch was making, and that, you know, nobody wants to get injured for England because it's the club that pays their wages, and you're going to get the glory. You're going to get to, at least even a Tottenham player can get to a Champions League final, whereas an England player very rarely going to get to a final.
I'm not sure if it's true or not, if it's actually a fact, but I have the feeling that we play more internationals than we used to play before. And there is an old saying that I was told when I was a lad playing football, that a striker has 500 productive games in him. 500. And if you're going to lose a fifth of those to internationals, then you go back to Mitch's point about who's paying him. You know, you've got a huge imbalance there. You know, someone's paying him $200,000 a week, but I'm not going to have him for 20% of his career.
That's actually quite true, Geoff. We are playing more internationals. On average, previously to the 1990s, we were playing somewhere between 4 and 6 per annum. Now we're playing between 6 and 8 per annum. So there is a difference.
Yeah,
there is definitely an increase.
Probably more pressure now than back in the 80s and 90s as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although in saying that, it's easier to qualify now for tournaments. If you look at past tournaments, you'd always have to finish top of your group out of a group of 4. Whereas now you can quite conceivably finish third in a 5-team group and still qualify for a tournament.
Part of that is because there are now more countries playing football.
Yeah.
With the breakup of the Soviet Union.
That's true. That is true. But I just think the way things are going, the way the structure is with the leagues and everything, it's... I don't know. I don't know what the actual proper answer is, the solution. But
well, as we don't have an answer for that, let's move on. Let's move on to the Premier League. We've said on this show, Steve, Kenneth Kenton and Geoff Saunders and myself previously called it the Everton Cup, the race for 7th. But Everton aren't in it. They seem to have been knocked out quite early of their own cup. We've talked on this show endlessly, and we still will, because it is hot news. Pochettino and Solskjaer, who's going to get sacked first? But Silva at Everton.
Yeah, he's under massive pressure.
He's got to be on the way out, surely.
I think he is, and I think the reason why he will go is the reason why it's all gone wrong in the first place. The reason he was successful last season and before that was because of his number 2, Portuguese guy. He left at the end of the season, and the Portuguese team he's taken over, who have a home ground with a 5,000 capacity, are now top of the Portuguese Premier League.
That's right.
It's the assistant. They got the wrong guy.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Geoff here.
if you look at Everton have got quality players. They should be sitting around the mid-table mark. I mean, at the moment, they 5th from bottom? There are glaring warning signs that I think unless they change manager and bring in some fresh blood pretty swiftly, they're going to be fighting for a bottom 3 place.
Yes, I mean, they should be. With the signings they made in the transfer market, we all said that they're going to be looking at pushing for, never mind 7th, 5th and 6th, and possibly even higher. And to be honest, as a Tottenham fan, Tottenham have made way for other teams to have that opportunity to finish 4th, and Everton should have been up there. They've got some great players, so they keep telling us, so their fans keep banging on about. They did make some big signings. Intelligent signings. Is it because Silva is made out to be better than he actually is? Is he out of his depth? That's what I'm saying.
I think he is out of his... I think he's getting found out. I think when he was at Watford, he had a team that were big, strong players, that would just barge through everything. Whereas now he's at Everton, they're a bit namby-pamby in the way they do things. And I think any manager, and this is just, you just mentioned earlier about has he signed big signings and all the rest of it. As an Arsenal fan, for me, the biggest result of the season wasn't watching Tottenham get beat 7-odd by Bayern Munich the other night. It was Arsenal getting 35 million plus add-ons up to 43 million for Alex Iwobi. That's the transfer of the decade. That really has to be for someone who couldn't hit a barn door. You look at the signings he's made. He signed Iwobi and he signed the midfielder. But anyway, he spent about 30.
Well, he paid, was it Barcelona for Gomez, but Gomez was there on loan.
He was already there on loan.
On loan, yeah.
But
and Walcott.
Who?
Yeah.
There's a player.
He's a promising young player.
Absolutely. There's a player who was...
He has been for years.
Arsenal signed him from Southampton with all the promise in the world. And he did have a few good games at Arsenal.
He did.
And then he's just disappeared off the face of the earth.
There used to be an expression in English, didn't there? Sending somebody to Coventry, which means you're not talking to them. Disappearing off the face of the earth is now going to be called going to Everton.
I'm sorry, I'm going to contradict Mitch here. There is nothing this season that will top Spurs being beaten 7-2 by Bayern Munich and then getting done 3-0. I mean, I hear you can't beat Brighton this time of year anyway.
Let's move on then. We talked about Everton. What about Watford? Because we all think that they're better than the position that they're in.
Yeah.
Why?
Because we just like them.
They've got a squad of very good players. They're creative. They're just, at the moment, for some reason, not putting the goals away.
They're utterly disorganised.
I don't know about that, but I think that we have to check this. But I think no team has had more shots on the opposition goal from within the penalty area than Watford this season, and yet they haven't got the goals for it.
I think it's just bad luck at the moment. I think eventually it will click. They are a good squad of players, not much different from the year or two before when Silva was there. They play the same style of football. All right, they've brought a previous manager back. I never think that's a good idea, but they've done what they've done. They'll be okay. They've also got Danny Welbeck, when he's fit on his day, is as good as anybody else. And I think Watford will be okay. I think they'll probably finish, if it clicks and they get a run together, they're looking at mid-table, maybe just above that, like they did last season.
Yeah.
They're a good side. They're a very good side. They've just been unlucky. And your luck will change eventually.
All right then, chaps, let's turn our attention to the forthcoming fixtures in the Premier League. We're going to start with Everton against West Ham, because we've got Geoff, who is a West Ham fan, and we've just been talking about Everton and all their big signings and how they're struggling. Will they continue the struggle against West Ham?
I think they will, yeah. I think West Ham should be too good for them in every area of the pitch, really. And Silva, he gives every appearance of having lost the dressing room.
Despite who West Ham are playing, I can actually see West Ham finishing in the top 6. They are that good this season. I really fancy them.
I think 8th to 6th. For 6th, the defence would have to get a whole lot better very quickly.
Possibly, yeah. But they're a very, very good side. Very tough to beat.
They're not tough to beat. They probably got, apart from City, the best midfield. And you add the forwards into it, and it's very, very good indeed. But the defence is poor. Great goalkeeper when Fabianski's back. But
And isn't it strange? I mean, Fabianski couldn't catch a cold at Arsenal.
I know.
And yet West Ham, even at a previous club, Swansea, it's fantastic.
Well, if you look at the stats from last season for goalkeepers, he was actually the best.
It makes you wonder, actually, what was going on with the coaching at Arsenal in relation to the goalkeeping, because there seems to be a consistent problem at Arsenal with goalkeepers.
Well, I think that for the last few years there's been a consistent problem at Arsenal in defence as a whole.
It doesn't matter who you've got in goal. I'm not being funny. If your defence has got a back four like a lump of Swiss cheese, it doesn't matter who's in goal. The days of David Seaman and that back four, which in my opinion is one of the best ever.
Oh, absolutely.
Doesn't matter who's in goal. Fabianski is, I think, he's one of the top goalkeepers in Europe. Highly underrated, highly underappreciated as well.
Yeah, I think he's in the top 5 in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, linking Fabianski and Arsenal, they've got Sheffield United on Monday night, and you know what? Sheffield United could turn Arsenal over. So flimsy at the back, it's frightening. I mean, they're a really porous defence. The funny thing is, though, I think they've only conceded 1 goal in their last four games, but I think that's papering over the cracks somewhat.
What do you think then, Mitch? Sheffield United, long way to go, tough game.
I do agree with Steve that the back four at the moment does look a bit rocky.
Shall we say they look like England?
Yeah.
That's how bad they are.
And I'm not going to be biased because I do follow Arsenal, but with Bellerin back, we've got Tierney on the other side, Rob Holding's back to fitness. I don't think the back four will be the same. But going back to Sheffield United, they haven't met Lacazette and Aubameyang yet.
We're going for an Arsenal win.
I think comfortably. I think Arsenal win 3-0.
All right, let's move on to Manchester City. Lost last time out to Wolverhampton Wanderers 2-0 at home. They are away from home City. They're playing Crystal Palace, mid-table team who never seem to achieve very much apart from just stay in the Premier League. But, they've got a steady manager. They're doing a steady job in the league. Palace against City. I really feel City are going to come back strong, as they did when they lost to Norwich. They lost to Norwich. The next week, they won their next game 8-0. So I pity poor Palace.
I don't think Palace are going to be the pushover that you think they might be. Palace are actually a half-decent side. They're well organised. And I don't think City are firing on all cylinders either. If Fernandinho starts for City, then obviously I think we could well be looking at a draw on this one, potentially.
I also think with City, they're not the same team if De Bruyne's not there. I think if De Bruyne's there, they have that momentum, that flair. I think when someone else comes into the middle and takes over that role, they're not quite the same. And I think when he's not there, I think Guardiola struggles. I'm not saying struggles in the sense he doesn't know what he's doing. Obviously he does. But when you have one linchpin that everything evolves around and you take that out, it does different things. It's not the same.
Well, I mean, he's played without De Bruyne, he's played without Fernandinho, and they've capitulated.
But all teams have a linchpin of some kind. They can. Liverpool at the moment, they can drop. Mane could fall out of the team, but they've still got Salah and someone else comes in. But with City, they are a fantastic team, a fantastic squad. But Zinchenko, what his name is, he's not the same. You can't put him in there if De Bruyne's not playing.
But we say that about Liverpool. What if they lost Van Dijk? Because Van Dijk is extremely important to Liverpool. If Liverpool lose him, their defence is not half the defence that it ordinarily would be.
Well, yeah, but that's a complete hypothetical, isn't it? Actually, I think the way things are at the moment in Liverpool, with their confidence, they could ride through 2 or 3 games without him. To be honest, the thing with City, you say Fernandinho wasn't playing. Well, he has been. He's been playing centre back, and Rodrigo, who came in,
and they missed Laporta as well. He's made a difference.
They really missed
massive difference. Massive difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah,
because they're having to rely on Otamendi, and you're in big trouble.
Otamendi, David Luiz at Arsenal. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is one of them can play football.
Luiz can play football, but Luiz does go wandering sometimes.
Well, David Luiz is not a defender.
No, he's not. And he's playing in the middle of defence.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I agree with Chris. I think City will do Palace.
Do you think so? I don't think it'd be a walk in the park. I think it'd be close.
No, it won't be a walk in the park because no one gets a walk in the park at Palace.
No, that's right.
Palace.
And they're a physical team.
They're a physical team, but I think City will
with
beat
Palace,
them.
if you can snuff out Zaha, you've got half a chance. But they're not a mug side, and Hodgson's been round the block many times, and I think that's got a draw written all over it.
Palace will attempt to snuff them out. They'll dull their creativity, but I think City will edge it. I think there'll be goals in it. I don't think it'll be an 8-0 drubbing or anything like that. It'll be a lot closer than that. I think there'll be 1 or 2 goals in it, and I think City will win that one. However, let's move on to my team, Tottenham Hotspur, who are all over the place in the dressing room. Quite clearly there are problems there. Will he stay or will he go? Pochettino, Dele Alli out of the England squad, and Roy Keane, a legendary big mouth. Roy Keane is saying that Dele Alli might have to consider the fact he'll never play for England again. I mean, this is Roy Keane, of course, Dele Alli has hired a nutritionist. He's cut down on his commercial appearances, but that is not what's going on at Tottenham. That's not the problem. They've a chance to right the wrongs against Watford. They've had an international break. Some of the players have done very well on the international break. A few goals in it. Vertonghen, for example, scored on the international break. Dele Alli had a rest because he wasn't even in the squad. Is this the one? Are Tottenham finally going to win a game?
No.
Steve, you really think Watford are going to win away at Spurs?
Yeah. I do. Spurs are in all sorts of trouble at the moment, aren't they? And look, as we've discussed, Watford actually are a better side than their current position would tell you, that they are they've got decent players. Spurs are in all sorts of problems at the moment. Harry Kane coming back just from international duty, amongst others. I really think Spurs are in a lot of trouble. I think Spurs could go into freefall.
I think also with Tottenham, they're missing a goalkeeper. Remember, Lloris is out now. He's out minimum, what are they talking about? Christmas, January? Giza-Nigger in goal. But I think with Spurs, there are obviously a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Probably say a draw, I think, which wouldn't appease Tottenham fans. But at the moment, the way they're playing, they'd probably take it.
I understand what you're saying, but I think Pochettino is a good enough manager that he can get them playing again.
But against a team like Watford, who are just big physical team,
Yeah, I know, but I think he can get the players motivated. I think if he can't, then he's probably got to go because he's got. Well, exactly, but he's got to show that he can turn this round. Otherwise, nobody's going to hire him as a manager. No, because that you go through the squad player for player. Watford have got some very good players, but Spurs are ahead in every position.
Of course, yeah.
So if they don't play, you have to look at the manager, don't you? There are the players there. Levy can say, look, I gave you the money. Here they are. What are you doing? And he's got to turn it round. And I think with the time there's been between the Brighton game and now, he will have done that.
I don't think he can turn this around because there's a lot of dissension in the ranks within the dressing room as well, given the current alleged situation between a couple of their players, so I think that will have a big impact, and I don't think we can underestimate how much damage that can do. If you've got a split dressing room, you've got a split team. I don't think any manager can, apart from maybe an Alex Ferguson, would be able to turn something like that.
Steve, we don't have to imagine it; we've seen it. I mean, we've actually watched it happen, haven't we, in front of us? You don't need imagination for it. The question is, can he turn that round? And just think of it from the point of view of a lot of those players. I mean, a few of those players, maybe 5 of them, want to leave anyway. Well, you don't leave if you're playing badly because nobody's going to buy you, are they? They've got, he's got to say to them, look, I know you want to go, but your best way of going is to make us win.
I can't see that happening. I really think Spurs are going to go into freefall. I can see them finishing bottom half of the table.
No, I think you'll find he will turn it round. Yeah. I think some issues will be resolved in the next few weeks, and we're not far off the January transfer window when a lot of them will be going. And because we've got players coming back from injury as well.
Eriksen's out of contract at the end of the season. Yes. I think Alderweireld is another one. I don't know if Vertonghen's contract is up at all, but
he's another one. Then there's Danny Rose wanted to leave.
Danny Rose doesn't want to play football, does he? He just wants to pick wages up.
He's not a happy chap.
Yeah, but I did hear something a little while back. How true it is, I don't know. That a few games back, it wasn't Pochettino that picked the team, that Daniel Levy is getting involved in training.
Geoff actually mentioned on last week's show that there was a little bit of a problem regarding Pochettino not turning up for training and watching it on CCTV.
And Daniel Levy picked
in his office.
It was before the bad game against Bayern Munich. It was a couple of games back that Levy was taking training and picking the team.
I find that very hard to believe. All right, let's move on before we get ourselves into any trouble, and we can't afford lawyers. Let's move on to
We've got nothing to take anyway.
2 big games. Yes. We're not even using microphones, we're just using rolled up bits of newspaper. 2 big games coming up, the last 2 we want to discuss on this show. 2 very terrible teams and 2 very good teams. We've got Chelsea against Newcastle and Manchester United against Liverpool. Chelsea have coming good under Lampard.
Yeah.
I think we all need to agree that this whole thing, he has to play the young players, that's why. He doesn't have to play them, he is playing them. So it's credit to Lampard for playing the young players. He's not been forced to play them, they're part of his squad. He's only lost a couple of players, and Arsenal are very grateful for one of those, I'm sure. He's only lost 2 players, really, and he's got all these great youth players. He's using them. Chelsea against Newcastle, who are, Geoff? What are Newcastle?
They're a terrible team.
Terrible. Start with you then. Chelsea against Newcastle, and then we'll go around the table, and then we'll come back around the table with Man United against Liverpool.
Just to kill this stupid thing that people are saying that Lampard has to play these players because of the transfer ban, is a load of rubbish. They lost Eden Hazard, and they'd already replaced him with Pulisic in the previous transfer window, and he's playing 4 young players. Net loss of 1 player, and he's playing 4 of them. He's playing them because he chooses to, because they're better, and I think they'll win quite comfortably.
Yeah, I'm with Geoff on this. First of all, Newcastle, utterly terrible team. I completely endorse everything that Geoff's just said. With regard to Lampard, I mean, there were calls with it after a couple of games for his head. I know it was done in meant to be some form of joke or satire or whatever. You know, Lampard needs a good couple of seasons, and to be honest, he's actually proven to be a pretty decent manager at the moment.
He's doing very well down there. I mean, I've got a lot of time for the guy. I think he was an excellent player. I think as a manager, he's done very well so far. I think in the long run, he'll be good for Chelsea.
I'm not sure you could say he's a really, really good manager yet. But
he's been good up to now.
But one thing he has shown at Derby last year and this season is he learns as he goes along.
Yeah.
He's getting better all the time, and you can see it. And his team's getting better.
I look at Lampard, and what I'm looking at there is a future England manager, to be honest with you. I can see him managing England eventually.
When he's 65.
No. I really think, give it 4 or 5 seasons, I reckon he could end up managing England.
No. He's too young, and I think if he done well at Chelsea, he goes on in a season or two, wins the Premier League, then the clubs in Europe will be looking at him. In Barcelona, the Real Madrid, the Bayern Munichs, the big clubs around Europe will be looking at him. I think an England job is for someone whose career is either dived or is ended, and they just want to just find...
It's a part-time job, let's be honest.
Part-time job, yeah.
Lampard doing well, and last one is Manchester United, Geoff's favourite team to hate, against Liverpool, who are just spectacular this season, unbeaten. Yeah. And not only unbeaten, they've won every game. Is there just one outcome of that game? Because a few journalists, respectable journalists, are saying that if Solskjaer doesn't at least come away with a draw, he will be sacked. And Manchester United against Liverpool is one of the oldest and biggest rivalries in football.
You don't want that as your last game, though, do you?
You don't want that as your last game. It was Mourinho's last game.
When he first come in, they were on a crest of a wave, new manager, it sort of kick-starts everything. And then once you start bedding it down, I think they've got their issues in the dressing room as well, with the likes of the Pogbas and those sort of players. I think this could be his last game if it is really bad. If it's a 4-5, 6-0 sort of game, a humiliation, I think he could be on the next ferry back to mould.
The problem with sacking him is who's going to sack him? Answer, Woodward. Who hired him? Woodward. Who hired the previous manager?
Woodward.
And the one before that?
Woodward.
And the one before that? So
Woodward.
So how many times can he fire a manager without resigning? The shareholders at some point are going to say, look, we're giving you this money, £892 million since Ferguson left. And they're saying, we need at least 3 transfer windows to put. We gave you 900 million quid.
The reality is, Woodward probably should sack himself, putting it bluntly, because ultimately he's the man who's doing the hiring and firing. 4 or 5 managers down the line, still no there isn't an improvement. If anything, Man United has taken a step backward. Solskjaer, is he a poor manager? Do you know what? I don't know.
What's he done? What has he done?
He managed Cardiff and they went down.
And he went to
managed Mould, and Mould were doing okay.
Have you seen the Norwegian League lately?
The thing I think about Solskjaer and is the thing that makes it such a strange appointment, a permanent appointment. I understand the argument for the interim appointment, feel good and all this sort of stuff, and let's bring back all these nice feelings about Manchester United's history, etc., etc.
Let's live in the past.
Yeah, exactly. But with Mourinho, they hired a man who is a park the bus, counter-attacking manager. That's his shtick. And he is the best manager in the world.
And he gets results.
That. Well, I question whether he gets results anymore. And I think
that's because everyone's worked out how he works.
Well, no, it's just the world's moved on. The football world has moved on. That doesn't win you things anymore. So having decided to get rid of the best park the bus, counter-attacking managers, to then go to someone who's not as good at it as him was a bizarre decision.
Yeah. Especially when I think Solskjaer, if I remember rightly, was the second choice that Man United want. They wanted Pochettino a year or so ago. Is that the future answer for Manchester United? Will Pochettino, if he fails at Tottenham, go to Manchester United? Is that a step back for him in the sense of where the teams are at the moment?
At the moment, yes, it's a step backwards or downwards for Pochettino, definitely. No question.
I can see Allegri going to Manchester United.
Well, that was the story last 2 weeks, wasn't it? When Allegri was in London for some unspecified reason.
Yeah.
And and announced that he was taking English lessons.
Guys, that leads us to the end of the show. But before we round it up completely, we have got the answer to Geoff's trivia question. And just before that, because we have got our 2 Arsenal fans in here, a big shout out to ex-Arsenal goalkeeper Peter Cech, who is now a shot stopper for Guildford Phoenix. Yeah, he's an ice hockey player, saved 2 penalties last night. Would you like him back?
He saved more penalties last night than he saved for us in his entire career at Arsenal.
Okay, well, the question was, given that some other players have scored 6, 7, 9 goals in top-flight matches, why is Morgan Camps-Peterson's 6 goals unique? And the answer is because they were all direct from a corner in the same match. 4 right foot, 2 left foot. I remember watching On the Ball, the ITV Saturday lunchtime football programme many, many years ago, and there was an argument between George Best and Brian Clough, where Clough said you couldn't score direct from a corner. So Best said, he made a bet with him that he could, and he said, and I'll do it on Saturday. And he did.
Fantastic stuff. That is all we've got time for. Just to repeat that this Saturday the 19th at Scandals Lounge Bar and Restaurant in Calahonda on the Costa del Sol, John Gidman and Steve Staunton, both ex-football players, of course, Liverpool, Man United, Aston Villa, they will be giving a question and answer evening, a fun evening of football for just €25. You've got a book to guarantee your place. It's all for prostate cancer. You can find Scandals on their Facebook page, Scandals Bar, Lounge and Restaurant. We need to say a big thank you to 93.6 Global Radio. Also, big shout out to Leon, Countryman and Mr. Maff at Deep Sound Radio. Thank you for having us. And of course, Mitch, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Geoff Saunders.
Thank you, Chris.
And Steve Kenton, back with a vengeance.
Thank you very much, kind sir.
That has been episode 20 of Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. We'll be back next week with episode 21. Do join us for the Football Podcast.
You've been listening to Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. Join us again next week for more of their twisted football news, all of their weird football views. You can find them here every week on Karle and Kenner's Hitting the Bar. We'll see you again shortly.